What's going on, guys? Welcome back to your Lake Fork Guide. Hey, it's summer bass fishing time here on Lake Fork and really everywhere. At this point, it's finally time for that deep crankbait bite. And today we're going to give you some in-depth tips on deep cranking offshore with my buddy Cord Huggins. Well, first thing, Cord, thank you so much.
Yes, sir.
For coming out here and doing this with us today. For those of y'all that have never seen Cord before, don't know Cord from Adam, this is my buddy Cord Huggins. He just started guiding out here on Lake Fork within the last, couple months, really?
Yeah, just getting going.
Just got moved down here, but I know you from the tournament stuff, tournament trails, chasing the old gold pot and green fish.
Yes, sir.
And Cord's a good buddy of mine, great dude, great fisherman. And we came out here today, and Cord kind of schooled me up on that deep crankbait, so I thought, why not sit down with Cord and find out exactly how he does it. So Cord's going to give you, he knows the deal around here. The score on Lake Fork Guide, the way we do things on your Lake Fork Guide is we're going to give you the most in-depth tips. We're not going to hold anything back. We're going to tell you every little secret, every rod position, handle, turn. We're going to give you all the goods. That's what we pride ourselves on doing, more so than anybody else out there in the world of bass fishing. So Cord, he's on board with the program. We're going to do it today. You know, something that's kind of been strange this year, Cord. Normally at Lake Fork, we start getting that big plug out in May and really catch them in May and June. And for me this year, we really didn't, I mean, we caught a fish here, a fish there on that deep crankbait. But honestly, today, that was kind of the best deep crankbait bite I've really seen this year. I've caught one off here or there, but never where, you know, the traditional deep cranking deal out on Lake Fork, we got so many fish and they group up. You get one to bite it and it's like another one bites it and another one bites it. And that kind of happened for a little while today. It's been a weird year. We know weather-wise, everything stayed colder longer. We've all talked about that at length this year. But we're finally to that time where that water's approaching that 90 degrees. The water temp today was around 88, 89 degrees. And so we're getting towards that 90 degree. Those fish are really starting to group up, and they're biting that crankbait in numbers finally.
Finally, yeah. It's been tough, and I'll say, like, this has been one of the better days I've had. I'm just like Billy, pull up on them, and it's one, maybe two at best, and you can sit there and just try to wear them out, and they just won't eat it. And today I don't know, it has to do with the cloud cover. They're just finally getting to that point. You know, they're looking like they're setting up where they need to be. But yeah, it's been pretty slow, but it's finally happening now.
And they're eating it. Like, we were only out for just a couple hours today. We didn't go out very long at all. But the fish on this point right here, that we came back over here to film this instructional on this point. And the fish that were eating it over here today, they were getting both hooks in the mouth. I mean, they were hammering it.
Yeah, I mean, like, they were actually eating it. I mean, you can't even lip them. You know, usually if they're just swiping at it, you'll get one hook in the back, or you'll have them hooked in the side of the head just because they're going up and flashing at it. And that hasn't been the case today. They've really been choking it well.
So that's another thing we pride ourselves on here a lot, guys, is having the most current information possible. And this is current, man, for us, for what we're seeing in our boats, and we're both out here a lot of days. More days than not, we're out here on this lake. And so for what we're seeing, it's right now, deep crankbait bite, let's take it from here and go. Should be the rest of July and really all of August. We should be able to get that deep crankbait rolling.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, should just get better from here, and you can bet it'll stay on my front deck for the rest of the summer and probably into the fall.
Absolutely. Well, Cord, you know, on the surface, a deep crankbait is like a really simple technique. It's like you throw it out there and you reel it in, but with a deep crankbait, you better have the right gear. So what gear are we throwing it on?
Man, and it's super important, you know, like everyone's, just like you said, thinks it's just, oh, you just chunking and whining. There's a lot more that goes into that. Me personally, I normally throw a 7'11" Ducket, I believe the Pro Series, but
that's similar to what I throw. I throw the 8-foot Lux Series. I've got an 8-foot heavy. I think I got one right here. Got one right here. This is mine. This is a 6 cents rod Lux Series. 8-foot heavy, but it's got a moderate tip.
It's got a lot, like a really parabolic action to it.
You want a big rod with big backbone, but you got to have that deep bend, that tip.
Yeah, that, and it's important to have a good tip on it in order to make those real long casts, because without making a long cast, you're either not ever hitting the strike zone or you're in it for that long.
Right, the more line you have out, the longer that bait stays at the desired depth, at the maximum depth.
Absolutely.
Well, so also with that tip though, the long cast, that's a big deal.
Yeah.
But two, when you got a treble hook bait, fighting that fish.
Yeah. Yep, having it,
That's more shock absorption.
Yeah, the rod should just load up. I see, I've got buddies and I see guys around that, like, oh, I need a big heavy plug. That means I need a big heavy rod. And you're not going to chunk this thing on a flipping stick. Yeah, you could probably throw it, but you're just going to rip the hooks out of their mouth. Having that right soft tip, so you're just cranking along and they just load up, and all you do is just kind of lean into them, and you just never stop. Just keep them down, and just, like, I hardly ever stop cranking. I just bring them to me, because the more time you let them flop around with that big plug in their mouth, the better chance they got of spitting it.
Well, and that's, there's kind of two different philosophies when it comes to deep cranking. There's the guys that like to throw the glass rods, and those guys have to play those fish.
Yeah. You
can't really horse a fish on a glass rod, but it's got that bigger, more bend to it, more shock absorption. I've seen you do it. I know how I do it. We're more graphite rod guys, and you're not going to throw them on a flipping stick, but for, the type of crankbaits that we're talking about here, guys, for instance, we're talking about 20-foot divers.
Yeah.
We're talking about, and the ones that we both use are the 6 cents. They're the Cloud 9 series, C20 and C25. If I go down to a C15 or less, it's a little bit different setup, a little bit different gear. But for offshore, Lake Fork, deep cranking, I'm wanting a C20, a C25. Even if I'm fishing 15, 17, 18 foot of water, I'll go ahead and throw that C20 because I want it down there banging.
Yep.
So that's the bait we're throwing. But on those big plugs, C20, C25 type plugs, you're not going to throw it on a flipping stick, but it is a flipping stick to about right there.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I want it to have a ton of meat. And just what you said, when you lean into them and you get them loaded up good, man, point that rod down in the water and don't stop, and then right at the end, lift them and bring them in.
Just get them in the boat.
The one thing about these big plugs, if you look at the hooks on these big plugs, that's a pretty big hook. Show yours up there. You can get a little closer than I can. But that's not a normal treble hook. Like, that's a big treble hook. So normally if you're throwing like a jerkbait or something, you really got to baby them, because the hook that's in them, if you've only got one in them, it's so small.
Yeah.
These, you can get away with horsing them because of how big the hook is, I feel like.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And then especially when they're eating it good, and usually you ain't got to catch but about one or two, and you can figure out real quick.
How they're eating it.
Yeah, like if they've got the whole plug hanging out of their mouth, or if they've got it down their throat, or it's stuck to the side of their head pretty good, you just got to pay attention to those things. And then a lot of times if they are short striking or things like that, it may be as simple as a color change. Like today, they've been eating, the old classic powder blueback chartreuse. Billy's got on a shad pattern one, and we're going to try it out. But, sometimes it's as simple as a color change, even from point to point or brush pile to brush pile or whatever you're targeting.
I just tied this on because we're about to see if we can have some fun when we're done filming.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
What y'all don't know is we film these videos for a couple hours, okay, we got enough catches, and then we go have fun. We'll turn the cameras off. That's right, absolutely. What kind of line are we throwing these crankbaits on, Ford?
I think that's one of the most important things.
That's real important.
That a lot of people overlook. They think big plug, big rod, big bass. I need 20-pound line. Absolutely not. Because you're throwing 20-pound line on a 25-foot diver, he's only going 17 foot probably.
Sometimes.
So I throw on an average 12-pound fluorocarbon. I run.
Really? You go all the way down to 12 pound?
12 pound. And even sometimes if I'm trying to get really deep, like if I've got fish in 30 foot of water, but my plug says 25, 26 at best, I'll even go to 10.
Do you ever upsize your line on those bigger crankbaits? You ever throw 15, 17, anything like that?
I do whenever I want the big profile, but I'm fishing shallower. If I'm throwing the 20 or 25, but I'm
throwing it 15 foot of water,
15 to 17 foot of water, I'll up to 15, 16, 17 pound line. That, or like if I'm like shell beds or, heavier brush, stuff like that, to where, if you do get hung up, or like line nicks and stuff like that. But, when we're.
Maybe a deal why you're catching them better on a deep crank than I am right now, because I do throw the bigger line on Lake Fork.
Really?
Because I'll just grab a 25-foot diver and fish it in 18 foot of water or 17 foot of water, but I'll throw it on 20-pound line because of all the timber, all the shell, all the brush, and fighting those fish through that. Like, I want to have that much more control, but in all honesty, that may be why you're getting more bites, because you're throwing that lighter line.
That's just something that I've picked up over the years and trial and error, because I don't know how many times that I've just standard had the 15, 17 pound on, because I'm on these East Texas reservoirs, catching big bass and throwing a 25 footer out. And I'm like, all right, well, I'm in 23, 25 foot of water, but you ain't digging. Like, you're never hitting bottom. Yeah. And it's trial and error.
You definitely got to hit bottom.
You definitely.
I've got to say it. You've heard me say it a few times. If you ain't banging,
you ain't cranking.
That's right. Guarantee you. That is so important, and that's where the line comes into play. But if you can get it down there, sometimes even having the bigger line, looks like to me, from what I've seen today, having lighter line might be better.
Yeah.
More bites. And you can overpower bait, right? Like, the heavier your rod is, the heavier your line is, you're going to take some action away from your baits. So sometimes even having that lighter line can be a matter of the bait's wobbling harder because there's less resistance on the line, and that can get the bite. So there's something to that, and it definitely looks like it's paying off today. When it comes to a reel, and I know you're not going to do it like I do because I do it different than everybody. Tell me about the reel we're using.
Me, on the big plugs, I go old school. I throw the 5, like this one right now is a 5/6-1 lose, just the speed spool, your $99 special. That's what I throw. And to me, yeah, you can't crank them quite as fast. I mean, like you may see in the video here a little bit, it looks like I'm working the crap out of it, but that plug's
a 5-to-1.
It's a 5-to-1, but you got more torque and it doesn't wear you down as fast. If I go a little bit smaller plug, I'll go to my 6/8-to-1,
okay,
you know, or 6/5-to-1, whatever gear ratio, you know, your real choice has, but I'll see how you do it.
So that's what everybody always says. And I've even got some of the big rods that I throw on at 8-to-1, 8.1.
Really?
This is 7.5-to-1. This is a loose Super Duty. Basically the same reel. This one just has bigger gears, a little bit heavier reel. And I just like that because it holds a little more line for deep cranking if I want a long line, troll away from it. And just making those long casts. And I do throw bigger lines, so I need the bigger spool.
Yep, absolutely.
So I've got the Super Duty. Now I do it a little different with my 8-to-1 where I go hard for a few cranks and then I go, but because it's an 8-to-1, the bait's still moving fast, but I'm just doing this. And it really doesn't, I did that actually, ironically, everybody thinks it wears you out more. I did it because it wears me out less.
Really?
Because I got 3 hard cranks and then I'm just cruising. And it's really not any resistance there. It's really easy to do, especially with this big Super Duty with these oversized handles and everything. It's made it a Cadillac for me. But that's what's cool about fishing. We all do things our own, we've got our own little flavor to it, right? It doesn't mean that you're wrong or I'm right, but today you were right because you were catching them. So we're going to go with what you say today. So that's kind of the setup. Like we said, the plugs we're using are the Cloud 9 series from 6 cents, C20 and C25. That's my mainstay. I'll throw a C15, but I'm usually fishing 12 foot of water when I'm doing that.
Yeah.
And now we're getting that time of year where we're fishing deeper than 15 foot all the time. So I'm throwing the C20 and C25, and I know you're the same. Color-wise, chartreuse and blue. To me, there's 3 color types that you need. There's chartreuse and blue on a deep plug.
Yep.
There's citrus shad.
Yep.
And then there's a regular shad pattern, which this is like, I think this one's called Tennessee shad. It's just a greenback shad pattern. Let me turn it this way so y'all can see it better. So a shad pattern like this, chartreuse and blue, and then citrus shad. That's the 3 colors I roll with. I find myself throwing the one that we don't have tied on, citrus shad, probably the most.
Yeah. It's the same staple in my boat. I keep it, as far as big, deep plugs, 2 or 3 colors.
Don't overthink the colors too much.
It's shallow cranking's a whole different game because then you play watercolors and all that kinds of stuff into play. Out here, these big bass are set up on these points and brush piles in the summertime. They got one thing in mind: eating. They are grubbing, and you're
well, and the light penetration is so much less down there. I think that's why the chartreuse and blue works so well, because they can pick it up really good in that deeper water with that hard contrast and those bright colors. They pick it up really well in that deep water.
And to me, it's a color that I can throw anywhere in the country. I've done it in Minnesota, you know, Tennessee, Alabama, Texas. It doesn't matter, watercolor, anything, you know. And usually when the water does get dirtier, I'm from Oklahoma, so we know all about the dirty stained water. So I mean, that chartreuse blue back will outshine a regular shad pattern. Now every once in a while you get the cleaner water like Fork. It's a crapshoot. You never know if, you know, they're going to be after that shad or if they want that chartreuse color.
Well, Keith Combs is probably the best deep cranker in the world right now, and over the last 5 years. And Keith Combs is a hammer on this lake anytime the fish are off the bank, no doubt about it. Like, he's always in the top. Yeah. Always in the top. And he straight up told me that, like, 90-something% of the fish that he's weighed in Lake Fork tournaments have come on a chartreuse blueback. Deep crankbait. That's what 90%, almost every fish he's caught and weighed in an event. And he had the best 3 days of tournament bass fishing that has ever happened at the top level right here in 2014, and it was on that chartreuse blueback crankbait. So it works here year round. It's something we all throw, and it's like, if you can't listen to Keith Combs, then I don't know who you are going to listen to. He's in my opinion, the best deep crankbait fisherman in the world.
He is. I mean, especially in now times. You got the old school guys like Paul Lice.
Yeah, I'm talking about over the last 5 or 10 years.
Oh yeah, last 5 or 10. Yeah, I mean and
especially in this area.
Oh, he has taken that color, that size of plug, and just dominated. I mean,
won all the money.
Oh yeah,
won all the money. Well, man, what type of areas are we looking for? I know right now we're sitting right here on a main lake point.
Yep.
What type of areas do you look for to deep crank in July and August?
I look for the long tapering points. some, like, especially to me, the better if they've got like a good drop at the end of them, like a good break line. You know, if you've got it where it slopes and runs way out to that 20, 25 foot, and then it's got that break, because you'll dig and dig and dig, and you'll be surprised, like, you have to move around on them, I feel like, especially like on Lake Fork. These fish move a lot, so you've kind of got to cover your base to start on one side and work all the way around your points. But whenever you hit that break line, you may not be digging anymore, but just like here today, I've had several bites way out here close to the boat to where it comes off that break, and those fish come up like it's not digging, it's just running through open water, but it buzzes right top across their head.
You think they follow them off that structure sometimes and come get them?
I think sometimes they do, especially, you know, like some of your spots. I know you've seen it, where you can pull up and they're just wadded on one spot on the point. And then you get some points where they're just kind of scattered, you know, they're in the right area. I think sometimes whenever you run your crankbait through a certain spot, you're just like, okay, they didn't bite at that time. And then all of a sudden, you know, 15 foot later, one of them comes up and snatches it, you know. And that, to me, whenever you feel like they're following it, I like to do kind of like you said with yours, a pause. But I'll really crank mine and then I just kill it.
Yeah.
Kill it and then pick it back up and just wind it. And every once in a while that'll help trigger a strike.
Sure.
And then sometimes they don't like it like that. They just want it to run away from them.
But so on areas specifically, is it points you prefer? Is there something you prefer? I mean, we fish pond dams, we fish road beds, we fish creek channel bends, we fish points. We got all kinds of structure out here on Lake Fork, and all these lakes in East Texas and Oklahoma for that matter too. Is there something you prefer over the other, or you just run around graphing everything and just depending on your electronics?
Really, to be honest, I look at everything. I don't let anything go to waste.
Just looking for the hot spots in the right depth and graphing all of it?
Yeah, you know, and like a lot of times, like you kind of get, like this is clay bank. It's kind of like a lot of do nothing, whatever. So you might look at other areas like that, you know, to where other people might not even think to look.
I think that's a thing on Lake Fork, especially on Lake Fork, is finding some of the stuff that's not obvious on Navionics.
Yeah.
You know, finding some stuff that, you know, this point, there's a point here, it's a good point. I mean, a lot of you guys are going to know this point we're sitting on, but this ain't the most popular point out here, and it's really not. When you look at it on Navionics, it doesn't have the best contour lines.
No.
But there's some good fish on it.
There's absolutely some good fish on it.
And ain't nobody fishing them. So we're
Except
here.
for us.
I mean, how many spots did we drive by that we wanted to fish today where we couldn't because there was boats on it, you know?
Oh, 5, 6, 7, 8 probably. I mean, and it's like that all the time. That's why, especially in your high pressured lakes like Fork, Rayburn, places like that.
Graph it all, man.
You graph it all.
Everything.
I mean, like your high spots. I mean, you'll have random high spots, or even, you know, I caught them the other day in the low spots where it was
in the bowls.
Yeah, like 14 foot of water all the way around, and you'll have, I mean, as little as like a little 2-foot bowl that, you know, is the size of your house pretty much, and they be watered up in the bottom of it.
And I'll really tell you, if you guys are rough, and I know a lot of you guys are watching this video are going to be like, man, I'm not familiar with Lake Fork. How do I know where to start? There's so much out there. It's overwhelming. Well, the best thing for y'all to do, really, honestly, and this is a plug, but it is what it is. It's the truth. Our app, the Fish Life app, LYFE, it's linked in the description of all my videos. You can click on it and check it out there. But we update those spots every month. And we got spots that we're out here catching deep fish on, whether it be points, humps, brush piles, bowls, creek bends, whatever it is. We've got spots that we update every single month on there, and you guys can start with those, and then you can find other stuff that looks like that after you've kind of identified those, and hopefully you go over and catch some fish. We have a lot of people come to Lake Fork for the first time and catch really good fish using that Fish Life app. So there's nothing else quite like it. There's no other app out there that has guys on the water full time like me and Cord putting spots on an app. That doesn't exist anywhere except for the Fish Life app. It is the most current and detailed information you'll find. That, if you want to know how to decipher where do I start graphing, that's the best tool.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And what's funny is, I don't even know if you know this, but I knew of the Fish Life app long before I ever knew who you were.
Is that right?
Yeah.
There you go.
A friend of mine in Oklahoma, I was down here fishing East Texas, and he was like, hey man, like check out this app, da-da-da-da-da, and I downloaded it, and I was like, all right. And then lo and behold, I meet the man behind the scenes on it, you know?
That's right. Because we about that life, baby. We out here living it.
Oh yeah.
We living that fish life. No. Got you one. Both living on the crankbait, that a boy.
You know, on most ones, that's not little.
Yeah, well, if you, that a boy. You got him going on that crankbait now, Huggins. It's another good one, though. Heck yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of a big one.
Attaboy. Attaboy, Cord. Sorry for the windy audio in the outro, but we're getting rain and wind all of a sudden out of nowhere, so we had to cut that off in a hurry. But Cord, man, great job on those tips. It's a great bait to go this time of year. There's nothing you can catch bigger fish on faster on Lake Fork than when they started grouping up offshore and biting a deep crankbait. So y'all pay attention to them hints. Pay attention to them hints, but also pay attention to them tips. So Cord gave you. Get up there and catch one big plug. Cord, thank you, brother.
Yes, sir.
Appreciate you doing that for us. Hey man, if y'all need to go buy my deep cranking rod, which is like I said, the 8-foot head with modern tip, or any of these big plugs, these awesome big plugs from 6 Cent Fishing, go visit 6centfishing.com. When you do, be sure you're punching that code, your Lake Fork Guide. You get a 10% discount on all orders, and it is linked in the description as always. Let's you know what? I don't hear lightning, so we're just gonna put the cameras up. We're gonna keep fishing. Y'all get to clicking them links. You know all them links in the description? Y'all get to clicking. We'll get back to fishing, and we'll see you next time right here on your Lake Fork Guide.